In November of in November of 2015, I departed, or rather prepared to depart for Chicago. My friend, who I'd known from a while back, told me she was about to have a baby. And we were chatting online one night, Facebook actually. And she told me she was about to have a baby and said she wanted to see me. And she said she had an extra room in her apartment. And she wanted me to come out there and be with her when she had the baby and to help her when her baby was born. And it was a strange situation because this had never happened. You know, back in the day, she and I had our past. We, did what we did. She had changed, I had changed, and she was about to have a baby. So I said, well, if I can find a way to get out there, I'll come and help you and be with you with your baby. I was very excited. And lo and behold, I actually ended up doing it very quickly. 2, maybe 3 weeks. I had the money, I had the plane ticket. It was coming close to her baby being born. I got on the plane, I went out to Chicago. I knew, because of what she was saying on Facebook, she was about to give birth. And I knew other ways. It's just one of those things about some women. And so I said, you know what? I'm not going to mess with her. I had a friend. He said I could stay with him for a couple of days if I needed to. I said, I'm not going to mess with her while she's about to have the baby. I'll wait till after she has the baby, give her a couple of days after she has the baby, and then I'll call her. And then we'll be able to meet, and then I can be with her after that. I never ended up seeing her. I was only ever able to actually get in touch with her one time, and that was on Facebook, and only when one other person was chatting with her, and it was like a three-way chat, except the other person didn't acknowledge me, and that was after 2 months after she had had the baby. Just so happened she named her baby after her grandmother. Her grandmother had a very beautiful sacred name, and it just so happened her grandmother's name was my confirmation name. It was the name I chose when I was confirmed. As both a member of the church that my old friend was the padre at, but also as a deaconess at that church. That's why I chose the name. It was part of the name I had also been baptized into when I was baptized in the Pacific Ocean. I was in California. I was baptized by a man who had a very specific lineage. I've already explained this. My relationship with Christendom is not conventional, and it doesn't involve any conversion or cult of death. Let's put it this way. It's different. But that's not the point. The point is, I went to Chicago expecting to help a expectant mother have her baby. That's not what happened at all. Sometime later, I'm in a domestic violence and homeless shelter, and I have a dream. In this dream, I see a beautiful woman who looks a lot like me. No glasses. And she has a veil on her head. And she is standing there and she's flanked by a group of men in uniform. And it's almost kind of like this Madonna and child motif, except it's not a Madonna and child. It's almost rather a Madonna with backup. Then I see a flag. And it looks kind of like the Mexican flag, except it's not the colors of the Mexican flag. It's different colors. And I start thinking about this, and it says, it's for you. This is who you are. To me. There's something in the underwriting. I'm like, no, this isn't for me. This is for... And then all of a sudden it changed. And I am no longer standing there with these men as my backup. I'm in a boneyard. I'm sitting on the ground. My legs are crossed. I have a skull in my hands, in my lap. All of my joints become alive and vibrant. And then there's a big wall of skulls behind me. Somehow feathers appeared. It changed. Now, I didn't get very upset because depending on who you are and where you are, these things can mean different things. Sometime later, I'm not in that shelter anymore. And I go to a museum in another part of Chicago. I had never been to this museum before. One of the exhibits in the museum discussed how during World War II, there were more people of Mexican descent who won Congressional Medals of Honor than any other ethnic group. I'd never heard this before, but it did something very profound to me, especially with the backdrop of the dream I had and my remembrance of it, and somehow me being in the boneyard did not seem at all unsettling. It seemed like I kept asking questions. Sometimes it's what you need to do. Because if I hadn't kept asking questions, I don't think I would ever have found that out. See, I come from a family that was in the military. My father, my grandfather, my uncle, my cousins. And so, with all that I've had to deal with in life, including struggle in Chicago, with an understanding that after the Vietnam War, there was a lot of radicalization that happened, including in connection with veterans, and that my beginning in Chicago was about social justice struggle with veterans. Didn't seem at all inconsistent. Sometime later, I'm in Texas. And I'm on a train. And I'm going past this train stop that just so happens to have the same name as a major private equity fund, including a private equity fund that invests very heavily in police pensions. I get off the stop in order to wait for the train, and the vision changes. It's very tormenting. It was as if it was chastising me. The woman was no longer me or the other woman that I was concerned was being underwritten in. It was my friend, the one who had the baby. It was my friend who had the baby, including her complexion and her hair, which is very different than mine. And she actually had her baby. And it was as if the expectation was that she would be offering her baby, and the men behind her were not the same men. They also weren't men from her community. They were Ukrainian. What? How did Mexican Americans backing me up end up turning into Ukrainians backing her up? Well, the point is it wasn't about me and it wasn't about her. We were just conduits for somebody else. They'd taken whatever they had hooked up at that time in Chicago and they supplanted it in Dallas. Lo and behold, within 3 days, what ends up happening? Impeachment witness Vindman fired, escorted out of White House after Trump acquittal. Apparently, there was this lieutenant colonel named Alexander Vindman who was a witness during the impeachment proceeding. He is a member of was a member of the National Security Council and had a twin brother who was a civilian. My understanding is that he was fired on February 7th. February 7th of 2008 was the day I was preparing and printing out a 300-page packet of information that I sent to the Department of Justice. I had it put through the mail. I had it processed. I had it verified that it would get there by the end of the day on February 12th. Well, I got a notice in the mail, the email, that it arrived in Washington, D.C. on February 15th at 5:04 a.m. Didn't make any sense. Who's delivering a USPS package to the Department of Justice at 5:04 a.m. on February 14th? Right? The point was it hadn't made it there. It hadn't made it there. By the end of the day on February 12th, it hadn't made it there on February 13th, and it sure as hell hadn't made it there by the morning of February 14th, at least that no one would acknowledge, right? It did make it there. I knew about it the same way I knew that Vindman was about to be fired. I just didn't know who the fuck Vindman was. This is very important right now, isn't it? So let me ask you a question. Those girls, because they're literal, actual teenage girls, are they going to the Ukraine or are they going to Russia? Literally. It's a literal fucking question, assholes. I know what you're doing right now. I know what you've been doing all weekend. And I know how the fuck you did it and who you did it for. Despite all of your pretenses, all your pitter patter, you're literally trafficking girls right now as part of a scheme that was brokered through the Clinton Foundation. And the question is, who's going to deposit them? Who is going to take the deposit on all of the economic events those young girls are going to be expected to transact for the next 25, 35 years of their lives? See, some of them might get to be the whole Madonna scenario, right? They might get to be a wild girl when they're younger and then find a nice guy who's attracted to her. And then once he tames her and marries her and she has a baby, all of a sudden she's a virtuous mother who's available for pension hedging. But more than one of them, most likely, is going to have to be like me. A spinster who's promised to a very, very, very high-profile retiree who had something happen in the meantime. And so at the end of his days, when he's at retirement age, he's all lonely and waiting to get that bonus he was promised all those years ago. You're making those promises right now. Actually, you made those promissory notes in 2017, and I busted you. And you're trying to deliver them right now, and you need to tell me. Just as a matter of accounting, because I understand that there were all these obligations I was expected to perform, including for the military pension fund. And I did this thing where I was reviewing pension fraud, and I said, you know what? I'm choosing yours, Mr. Vinman, Lieutenant Colonel. I'm taking your pension benefits, and I am going to see where they go. And this is where we are. So, did he get removed from what was expected to be the delivery based upon his service to the United States through the military? Or did the president claim that and decide to deliver them to his interest on the other side of the line? There's quite a buildup at the border, I've heard. Where those girls end up is going to be very fucking important, isn't it? See, because I'm inclined to take every fucking one of them and bring them here with me and arm them. Just so you know. And that's why I am where I am. Which right now isn't an actual boneyard, right? But it could be. Right? There's a lot of bones that have been broken in the last 12 years. It didn't need to be. Is it enough? Or do we need more?